I've had a pile of scrap wood laying around the shop for years now, and I don't want to just throw that away. Today I'll build some scrap wood side tables, and I'll limit myself to materials that I only have in the shop so I can find a good use for them instead of just tossing them in the dumpster. And I want to make 2 of these tables, and I'm not even sure I have enough materials on hand to do that, so things might get a little interesting. Okay, this is where I keep all of my scrap hardwoods. All of this is left over from past projects or given to me, but it's not enough to make a larger project. So let's get it all down and see what we're working with. We've got a variety of woods here. I think this is gonna be some maple that came out of a barn. This is the same wood that I built the epoxy dining tables with. All of this walnut is left over from the wood that I used to make the first version of the Scorpion axe. Solid mahogany beam that was given to me. And we've got some of these strips of some really pretty pallet wood that I saved, and this actually came from the pallet that my Carve Pro showed up on. And coincidentally, we're gonna use the Carve Pro to do some of the work for these side tables. I need to get all this wood milled up before I can start carving. After the milling process, this is all the wood that I have. Now, it may seem like a lot, but remember, I have to make 2 of these tables. I'm not sure this is gonna be enough. There is some really, really pretty wood in here. Some of it has knot holes and bark inclusions. Some of it is just a hot mess like this piece. In order to salvage some of this wood, I'm gonna do some epoxy fills on the pieces like this. Other pieces, like this piece of mahogany here, it's too thin. I'm gonna cut these up, re-glue them back together to either give me the proper thickness or the proper width. I'm not sure I have enough to make both these tables, so things could get really interesting. Too cold to pour in the shop, so I moved everything into the office where I actually have some heat. I'm gonna use some of this Total Boat thick set epoxy and add some black pigment. Then I can fill the knot holes and the cracks on these pieces. I went ahead and taped them off instead of building a form. I hope I don't regret not building a form and have epoxy leak all over the place. So I tried to take a shortcut and not build forms for these epoxy pours. I hope I don't regret not building a form. And as you can see, I paid the price. A bunch of the epoxy leaked out, got onto my floor, which this carpet is nasty, and I'd already spilled an entire gallon of paint on it, so it needs to come up anyways. Now I have to do another epoxy pour to fix this, which means another day of waiting around for it to cure, all because I tried to take a shortcut. Okay, while that epoxy is curing, I can switch gears and start working on those table bases, which I'm gonna make out of steel, and I get to use my brand new welding table I just got from Strong Hand Tools. This is the Rhino Cart. This thing is amazing. I've never had a welding table like this before with all the different fixturing options. I'm really, really excited to take this thing for a test drive. I found 3 pieces of 5-foot long, 1-inch square tube. Now that's not enough to create my original design, so I jumped in the SketchUp and I modified it from being a 4-legged table base to this 3-legged table base, which really I like better because you don't have to worry about any sort of wobble. And then for those lower stretchers, instead of using more 1-inch square tube, I'm gonna use 1-inch flat bar and weld it into this triangle configuration, which I think looks pretty cool. Okay, enough talking, let's get to some welding. Okay, minus the finishing process, these table bases are done and I couldn't be happier with the way they turned out. Up next, I've got to make the segmented rings that make up the tabletop. There's 24 segments in each tabletop for a total of 48, and there's 4 different length of segments that make up the rings. Now, to get the most efficient use of the wood that I milled up, what I think I'm gonna do is jump on the X-Carve Pro and go ahead and cut out those 4 different sizes of templates so I can lay them out on those pieces that I milled and kind of plan the most efficient use of the wood that I have. Okay, those templates turned out really well. As you saw, I went ahead and laid out all my placement for each one of these pieces on the wood that I have. I realized that I have way more than enough material. It looked initially like I was gonna be short, but I actually have a bunch left over, so I'm sitting good. Now, of the 3 sizes, for each of the tables, so you have to double everything, there are 11 of the number 1 pieces, which are the smallest. There are 3 of the number 2. There are 5 of the number 3. And there are 5 of the number 4, which is the biggest. And that is what happens when you don't properly have your workpiece clamped down to that wasteboard. Not only do you need to clamp it down to the wasteboard, you need to clamp it from the side so it can't move. So I went ahead and jumped on there real quick and carved out these cam clamps. This will allow me to clamp this against the side of the workpiece and then leverage that so I can lock it in place. All right, I'm gonna try that again. This time I will properly clamp it down. I'm also gonna use a little bit of VHB tape to help hold it down to the wasteboard. And then I'll make sure that I'm removing those chips as the machine is carving, stay on top of that, and I should see good results. Okay, that was way better. Those extra measures that I took to properly secure the pieces down and clearing the dust worked great. Now I just got 39 more of these to go. Let's do it. All right, these are the last two pieces to come off the CNC, and it turned out pretty well. Initially, I had some issues trying to be a little bit too aggressive with my cut settings. I dialed those back, especially cutting this really hard barnwood maple. I had to be a little bit more conservative. Ended up working out really well. Now the last thing I need to do is take it over to the router table, clean up the edges, knock off the tabs, and then I can glue up those segments. Okay, I've got the forms all made and the pieces all ready to go. Now what's nice is this is a piece of melamine that's left over from a past project, so I was able to recycle that. It's from my concrete river table that I did. Also, from that same project, I still had some of this bendable hardboard that I could use to make the form, so got really lucky there. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is pour this thickset total build epoxy and fill that void. And I kind of went back and forth on what color to use. I put a deal up on my Instagram stories asking people for their opinion, and what I settled on was a pure flat white epoxy finish on this. Now in my past projects I've done the bright colored metallic pigment swirls, and those look really cool, but I think on this project the wood is just really beautiful, and I want to let that speak for itself on this project and not take away from that. Plus I think that white will look really good with those blackened steel bases. Okay, enough of that, it's time to pour some epoxy. Okay, moving on to the finish on these steel bases, and I'm gonna strip all the mill scale off the steel using some muriatic acid, and then I'll come back with some of this Birchwood Casey Presto Black steel patina. I'll apply it to the whole piece, and it'll give it a nice, consistent blackened steel finish that looks really good. Okay, I let these cure for 2 days, and that Total Boat thick set epoxy came out perfect. Now, in the meantime, I was working on the bases. I've got those all finished. I need to get these out of the forms, run them through the drum sander, and then I can attach them to the bases with some threaded inserts, and this project will be done. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. I absolutely love the way these tables came out. They're absolutely beautiful. Those different species of wood all mixed together. It just looks amazing in my opinion. You know, I don't even know how you would describe this. It's sort of a mix of rustic, a little bit industrial, and a little bit modern, which is kind of my aesthetic. These are actually gonna go in my new house that I just bought. There's a whole bunch of stuff on that, some really exciting stuff coming in 2021, so make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss any of that. I want to thank Inventables for sponsoring this video. The Carve Pro is an amazing machine, and right now it's still on pre-sale for 30% off, and that's an amazing deal. So make sure you check it out. There's a link down below. And a big shout out to Total Boat as well. That thick set epoxy that I used on this project, it's probably the most user-friendly epoxy that I've ever used. I've had 0 issues, 0 bubbles. It looks beautiful. I've got a link for that down below, as well as a discount code. JBuilds will get you 10% off of your order. All right, everyone. Thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see you back here next time.